Let us pray. Almighty God, help us to see despite our eyes. Help us to think outside of our minds. Help us to be more than our lives. For your eyes show us the way, your mind knows the truth, and your being is the life. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I start almost all my sermons with that same prayer because it's a prayer that pushes us outside and beyond ourselves. To seek to and to emulate Christ, to allow Christ to be what our reason is, what our self is, what our actions are. I've always believed in pushing people to be more. I've done so as a pastor. I certainly did it as a teacher and a coach, always seeking to get the potential that I would see in the person that was beyond most of the time what they could even see, and that belief was rooted in the notion that all people were made in the image of God and therefore capable of more than what at first seems noticeable. I'm always preaching about the next rung and raising the bar and pushing further. And in doing so, and I know this from my coaching days and my teaching days as well, is that I often then forget to thank people and to give credit to folks, to make sure that folks know how much that their work is appreciated, to make sure that people know that I know that I stand and we stand on the backs of amazing effort by amazing people. And that's very true in this church. It is very true in this church. During I would call it my summer of discernment, when I was trying to figure out whether I was really being called to ordination. I had already finished seminary, but I had returned to teaching and was kind of feeling out that path. I spent the summer with Deanna at the Outer Banks, and the pastor of the Outer Banks Presbyterian Church at the time was this guy, Reverend Martinez. I was trying to remember what his first name is, but I can't. But I noticed, and he was just really great. He was very inspirational at that moment to me as in following that path. And he had a tradition that he tried to do, and that was to compliment his congregation, to compliment his church every time, every Sunday. And I think I should do that more. And so I want you all to know, first off, how grateful I am to be here, and how much appreciated all of the work that people have done in this church for almost 95 years so that this church exists now. But as soon as you get comfortable, you get back to Jesus, and he's preaching the impossible. And it's time to push some more. Because this is impossible. I want you to look at Luke 6, verses 27 to 38. Last week we started with this. This is called the Sermon on the Plain. It echoes the Sermon on the Mount from Matthew. It's Luke's version of the same ideas. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
I put the famous quote from G.K. Chesterton in the bulletin. The Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and left untried. How true that truly is. The notion of what a Christian nation would even look like. What would it really look like to say that you live in a Christian nation? I have hanging on in my office a painting that is strange. It is of Don Quixote de la Mancha. It was painted for me by one of my students. It's big and it's somewhat ugly, but it fits perfectly right where it is. In my classroom where it used to hang, it was always a little askew, which was somewhat on purpose. Can't really do that in there. But it's meant to remind me of the fact that what we are called to do is impossible. And the reason that a student of mine had made it for me is because we were doing Man of La Mancha as a play, and I was working with the actors about how to act, I guess. I was called from the basketball courts where I had been coaching by the director, and she said, "Hey, you need to work with these guys. They need to figure out how to leave themselves behind and start embodying these characters." And from that moment on, I was like, "Man, this is cool. I like this." But in that play is the song "The Impossible Dream." To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go. To right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when your arms are too weary to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. And the world will be better for this, that one man scorned and covered with stars still strove with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable star. So that is what that painting says to me every time that I look at it. And in that memory, in that vision, in that scene, I can see how his lance is broken. And you have to remember that he's been out trying to joust with windmills. And he's a little bit crazy. Because to live as Christ is teaching us to live, according to this Sermon on the Plain and in the Sermon on the Mount, is crazy in the world's eye. It's absolutely crazy. The Russian writer Dostoevsky tried to write a character in a novel who would embody the teachings in the Sermon on the Mount. The name of that character and the way that he was treated by everyone that he came into contact with was the Idiot. It's the name of the novel, The Idiot. Because it makes no sense. It goes against everything that the world teaches us to do. Could you even imagine a person who lived up to the standard that is preached here? Now, I want to think about each of the kind of details that push us in that direction. And I want to do so without shaving their edges off to make them palatable. Because that's typically what we do. That's what we do. We read something like this and we're like, well, Jesus didn't really mean that. He means this smaller version of that. But today I want to look at this without shaving any of those edges off. Love your enemies. Love them. Your enemies. Now, what is an enemy? An enemy is someone who seeks to stop you from doing what you want to do. That's what an enemy is. Someone who stands at your face and tells you, do not do that. Physically gets in your way or does something threatening or even more so to stop you from doing, being, and trying to be what it is that you are. Love them. Now that doesn't mean that you pretend that they're not your enemy and some way tolerate them. Because that's how we typically shave that one off, right? No, it says love them. Love them in the fact that they are your enemy. Love someone who is seeking to stop you from doing what you want to do, to accomplishing what you want to accomplish. Someone who is standing in your way, your obstacle, to love the obstacle. All right, so let's leave that one. Next, do good to those who hate you. Now, doing good, trying to do nice things, doing good things, trying to do right by, and then they hate you. What is it like to have someone who hates you? Now, this is different. I mean, they might be your enemies too, but like this is taking it at a more visceral, inside level. I mean, it's that person that cuts eyes at you just when they see you. I used to listen to this sports radio show on Saturday mornings. This guy from Philadelphia, and his whole deal is that he just gets fired up about stuff with his big Philadelphia accent, and he's just great. I just like listening to his voice. But he used to talk about how he hates the face of certain people. It's like Jared Goff. He would say, the quarterback of the Rams, he hates the face of him. Or anybody that doesn't fit the mold of what a quarterback should look like, and I hate the face. In The Simpsons, there's Maggie Simpson, the baby that's always, and the unibrow baby that gets pushed in a stroller down, and they just cut eyes at each other. Hate. Do good to that guy. Not who you hate, but who hates you. Who has this deep, visceral, just antipathy for you. Hate, loathing. All right, let's leave that one. Bless those who curse you. Question is, what does it mean to curse someone? What does it mean to bless someone? Like, is it like a magic trick where the enemy does things so that you can't do them? The person hates you, just like tries to give you. And then the curse is like actually putting into language some kind of magical force field that makes sure that you can't do what you want to do. Is that what a curse is? Bless that person with that strange power that they have to make sure that everything that you do goes awry. Now, we could shave the edges off of that one a little bit. And that would be the old bless his heart routine. Right? We've talked about that often. Bless those who curse you. Bless his heart, but that guy. Pray for those who mistreat you. Pray for what? Their health? Man, I pray that you get healthy so that you can go on mistreating me forever. Do you pray for their success? I really wish, God, that they could be more successful in their mistreatment of me. Because if you pray for them to stop mistreating you, then that's just praying for yourself with them as a subject. And that doesn't work. But maybe those are the edges we shave off without. I pray for his soul to be saved so that he becomes a Christian and stops being such a jerk. And I don't think that's what Jesus had in mind. Getting slapped in the face and then turning the other cheek so that they can slap that one too. Now, who does that? Who does that? Either figuratively or literally. Who does that? Because here's the next step. Someone takes your coat and then you give them your shirt too. What do we do when somebody takes our stuff? We lock all the doors. We make a bunch of rules to make sure that it never happens again. And not only do we separate the culprit from us, but then we put him safely behind bars. But then the rule stands in place and we don't trust anyone else either. No, if somebody takes your coat, you give them your shirt. Give to those who ask. Without a checklist to make sure they're worthy. Without a plan in place to make sure that they're not some kind of scammer. The only requirement for giving is the asking. And if someone takes, don't ask for it back. So it's not just your coat and your shirt, it's pretty much anything. He wants to make sure to double down on the truth of that. Not so that they will somehow be better for it, but just because it's the right thing from your perspective. And don't lock the doors and don't not trust the next guy who comes along, even after it happens again and again. Do to others as you would have them do to you. Not so that they will, because everybody laughed when I promised that to the kids. Good luck with that, we said. Not because they do, not because they did treat you as you would want to be treated. Not if they treat you like that, then you treat them that way. Not in case they might someday treat you right. No, to do to others regardless of what they might do. Just because. Do not judge, do not condemn, forgive, give, measure for measure. What would that person look like who behaved that way? What would we call him or her? What would his lance be broken like? What would that nation look like? would that church look like? But no, Jesus couldn't mean that. So we shave off the edges of all of that section to be nice. Be nice. Don't make waves. Stay in your line. Be kind. Because being mean is bad. But it robs it. Because what good is that? It's an impossible standard. It's a crazy standard. It's an unattainable standard. We even look at it and we're like, would we even want to be that person? But what if we took Jesus at his word? What if we thought that this is what is required of us? What Jesus means when he says in John, if you love me, then you will keep my commandments. What if these are those commandments? What if we are held to a higher standard? Because he says we're held to a higher standard. He says it right there in the middle paragraph of the text. If you love those who love you, if you do good to those who are good to you, if you lend in respect and expect repayment, what credit is that? What good is that? What reward is there for you? More is expected. Always, always, always more. How would we begin to put that into practice? And what would be needed to do the impossible? That's the question of today. What would be needed to do the impossible? Let's look at the Old Testament lesson. This is one example in the Bible of this very thing occurring. This is Genesis 45, verses 1 through 8. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one that you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and no reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt." The same Joseph, whose brothers couldn't speak peace to him, the same Joseph who his brothers threw him into a pit, the same brothers who sold him off into slavery, the same very brothers, he forgives in this way. You can even say, that's pretty amazing. And it even falls short. But what's needed for Joseph to be able to do that? What is it that Joseph has? What is it that Joseph has come to know that he didn't know before? It was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household and ruler of Egypt. All of a sudden, Joseph has the perspective that those enemies, those people who were obstacles to him, those people who threw him into the pit and sold him off to slavery, were in fact instruments of God, leading things to its fruition. Coming to terms with that is internalizing the message from last week about blessings and what it means to be blessed, and understanding that it is God who has blessed you in every single way possible. The Beatitudes, as found in Luke, are the idea that blessings are the opposite of what you thought they might have been. The opposite people are the ones who are blessed than the ones that earth decides are blessed, the people of the world. Can you see the life that you've lived so far as a blessing? And every person that has come in contact with you up to this point as a blessing, both the positive and the ones that we can't help but see as negative, but they're bringing us along. Our salvation comes to us through faith. Faith that God has us in his hands, and through Jesus Christ has shown us how much love he has, and that all things are being worked out for the good. And therefore, all of the people that you come into contact with are a part of that blessing. So love them. That's the only way it's possible. It's the only way that it is possible to live according to the way Jesus is teaching here, is by faith that everyone that you come into contact with, no matter what label you put on them, and Jesus says, go ahead and put the labels on them. Put the labels on them. Don't pretend that your enemy's not your enemy, but love them anyway, because they have been given to you by God for the betterment of yourself, for the betterment of his plan, of which you are a holy and important and inseparable part. What is it that is needed to do the impossible? The answer is faith. My daughters have been in a number of these plays now over in Hampton, and they're pretty neat, but they're kind of catchy kind of songs that get in your head, and when they have to learn their lines, so they play them over and over and over and over and over and over again. And so I can't read the word impossible without faith makes the impossible possible. I can't read the word impossible. I used to not be able to look at that picture in my office and not start singing to dream the impossible. Now that has been completely replaced by faith makes the impossible possible. But learning and internalizing that song and applying it would be a powerful thing in my life. And one that I work on every day. One that is a challenge in every moment of every day. Because there is so much in this world that makes you want to just either bang your head against the wall or draw away and quit. There's so much. But yet, to believe that there is more opens up such a bigger possibility for what we are and what the world is. And no matter what, I would prefer, and I think most of you feel the same way, I would prefer to be a part of that world. And so that is what we strive for. Not because we'll ever get there, but because the energy that it takes to strive is so much more powerful. Because it rests on faith, and it rests on Jesus Christ, who was actually able to do it. Father, forgive them. Father, forgive us. We know not what we do. But something in us makes us want to. In Jesus Christ we pray. Amen. So in the world